My name is Stephanie, and I'm the owner and lead planner at Beauty and the Budget events. I'll never forget the night that my husband asked me to be his forever. It's a moment that'll always be etched in my memory, and especially the way that I felt when he got down on one knee. If you just got engaged, my first recommendation is to take a deep breath and revel in your happiness with your partner. Then the next step is a pretty natural one. Start the celebrations. Share the good news with your family, with your friends, and then all of social media. But during the next couple of weeks, you might choose to have an engagement party, get your ring sized and insured, and of course, ask all your best friends to be in your wedding party. But whether you decide to dive right into wedding planning shortly after the proposal, or you choose to wait to plan the big day, there's 3 steps to follow once you're ready to really get the planning started. So, number 1, figure out the numbers. I know, it's not the most glamorous first step to planning the first day of the rest of your lives, but these 3 numbers are going to be greatly important for planning your big day, and they're going to have a really big effect. So, having this figured out first is going to really help you on your way. So, the first number, what's your budget? Before you book a single vendor or dream of a steak dinner and open bar, whatever it is that you're excited about, you need to figure out your wedding budget. If you and your partner plan to pay for your wedding, you'll want to discuss what you're comfortable spending and how you'll save for it. It's also a good time to ask your parents if they had considered helping, and if there's anything in particular that they'd like to help pay for. Maybe they're interested in paying for the catering, or they want to buy the wedding dress. If your parents are planning to fully pay for your wedding, you'll want to discuss in clear terms with them what they are willing to pay and if there's any stipulations on what the money can be used for. We recommend making your wedding budget as specific as possible, and we'd be more than happy to help you with that. The second number you want to figure out, how many guests are you inviting? Having an estimate of how many guests you'll invite to your wedding is so important, because it really affects how far your budget will go, as well as the size of the venue that you'll need. So take time to write down a list of the family members and the friends you'll each invite, as well as your mutual friends. I also recommend asking your parents if there's anyone they feel that you should invite, especially if they're paying for any or all of your wedding. It doesn't have to be the final guest list, but it will help you determine how much space you'll need and how far that money will go. While you're working on the list, you might want to consider reaching out to people for their addresses. Your mom might have a lot of the family addresses, but let's be real, our friends are still moving a bunch. And the third number you want to figure out, how long do you want to be engaged? You might have an exact wedding date in mind, a month or a season, or you might want to be engaged for 2 years. However you come up with the general wedding date, you'll want to think about how many months stand between now and that date. Do you feel comfortable planning a wedding in 6 months? Do you want to have 14 months to save up and plan? Most wedding planning timelines are set up based on how many months you are away from your wedding date, and you'll be counting down the days anyway. So you'll want to start with a number that you're happy with. And it's important to note that you don't actually have a wedding date until you've booked a venue for your wedding, unless you've chosen a specific date and you're going to book your venue based on that date. I always recommend having a few dates in mind that you'd be comfortable with before you begin your venue tours, because venues often book more than a year out, and you don't want to be too disappointed if your dream date isn't booked or available. Number 2 on planning your big day, gather inspiration. Now that the numbers are out of the way, it's time to get inspired. Chat with your partner about what your dream wedding looks and feels like. You may want to consider picking a theme to guide your aesthetic, or heading over to Pinterest to start or continue filling up your wedding boards. Are there colors and styles that you both love? Do you want to plan a wedding that reflects your wedding's date season? What's your favorite part of your relationship? And can you showcase that in the design? You don't need to dive into the details at this stage, but having a starting point for what you want your wedding to look like can really influence your venue choice. You'll also want to talk about what's most important for each of you when it comes to the wedding. Do you prioritize having a great party and spending more on the DJ and bar? Are you a foodie who wants the best wedding dinner? Have you had your eye on a specific photographer with the perfect style? These kinds of questions will help you create a more specific budget, so once you're ready to start booking vendors, you'll know what you're comfortable spending on each. All right, and the third step to start planning your big day is to book the first few vendors. So once you've checked off the first two steps of figuring out the numbers and getting inspired, it's time to book your first few vendors. We recommend the first one being the venue, as you might have already guessed. When it comes to looking for a venue, there's a few things you do really want to consider. Does it have a good date available? Can it hold your guest count? Is it within your budget? And does it fit into your wedding aesthetic? The second vendor that we recommend booking is a wedding planner. Now, if the idea of planning the rest of your wedding is stressing you out, you might want to consider hiring a planner because they can help guide you through the rest of the process, from creating a detailed budget and wedding planning timeline to vendor selection, design, and so much more. If you're only interested in hiring a wedding coordinator, you can wait until closer to your wedding date, but they will often still book out more than a year in advance if you have a popular wedding date, so it's something to keep in mind. And then the third vendor we recommend booking early in the game is your photographer, who I would consider to be voted most likely to be booked a year and a half out. If an awesome photographer is one of your high priorities, this should be one of the first vendors you look for to make sure you get the perfect person to capture your day. You'll also want to lock in your photographer early if you want your save the dates to have engagement photos. So, as a recap, the first 3 steps to plan your dream day once you're ready to start rolling. Figure out the numbers. That includes your budget, your guest count, and of course, how long you want your engagement to be. The second big step, gathering inspiration, figuring out what aesthetic you want to help you with your venue selection, and then booking those first few vendors, particularly your venue, wedding planner, and photographer. Have fun planning your dream day.